Welcome, Governor Livingston. You are in the zone. Brought to you by GLHS TV and GL Sports Zone. We are your hosts, Brian Tarabokia, Charlie Gilpin, Jonathan Schmidt, and today we have a special episode. We have Mets sports writer Pat Ragazzo here joining us. A little interview. Thank you, Mr. Haddad, getting him on here.
Yeah.
And we're going to get right into it. Any social medias you want to plug real quick? You know, where you can find you?
Sure, yeah. You can follow me at Ragazzo Report, Ragazzo Report on Twitter. So, and Instagram as well.
All right. We're going to get right into this. Chuck, you're batting lead off here. Let's I got a couple questions here.
What made you want to be a sports reporter, and how'd you kind of set yourself up to the position you are right now?
Well, that's a really good question. I wish that I did it the normal way, which would be to go into college as a journalism major and study that for all 4 years. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was sports obsessed growing up and when I was at GL, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. So I went to college as an accounting major, actually. Lo and behold, I didn't do too well as an accounting major, so I switched to communications. And that got me into taking some journalism classes. And I wasn't really sure that I wanted to be a sports writer. I thought that I wanted to be on the air, like a sports radio host or sports TV host. And a person who I spoke to, one of my connections, gave me a great piece of advice while I was still in college. And it was, if you want to be on the air, if you want to be on TV, on radio, talking about sports, you better learn how to write, because that's how you build your credibility. So that's when I knew that, the goal was to become a sports writer. And I worked some internships that got me some great experience. I interned at WFAN summer of 2018, so right before I graduated college in the fall. And I got to go to a couple remote live broadcasts at Giants training camp. So I was meeting like Eli Manning, Saquon Barkley, you name it. I got to meet like a good amount of professional athletes and help out with WFAN's radio shows. And after that, I was like, all right, I need to find a way to do this full time. Like, this is the atmosphere I want to be around, and this is what I want to do for my career. And, the rest is history.
Awesome. What's it like being a sports reporter in probably one of the hardest cities to like sports market? Like, it's such a toxic city. It's being a player there is definitely pretty hard.
Yeah. Strong words.
It's tough. It's tough because, especially with the home games, covering home games from Citi Field for the Mets, there's about upwards of 30 reporters sometimes, that you're competing with. So it's kind of hard. You're all trying to ask the same questions, and it's like you got to think outside the box a lot and kind of got to be go into stealth mode a little bit and, kind of keep your head on a swivel of who you want to talk to that day, because someone else could definitely, steal something from you or get a story or a quote that you were trying to get. So it is super competitive. It's super tough. But I just consider myself fortunate for being able to start in the biggest market, because that's not normally common, in this industry. Usually you have to go to a smaller market first. So, I kind of got thrown into the fire right away, but it's been a great learning experience.
Yeah. How'd you get involved with the Mets? Was baseball always your focus?
So I grew up a huge Mets fan and a huge New York Giants fan. So I was, it's like a dream come true, honestly, to be able to cover the Mets now, a team that I grew up following so closely. But I was freelancing for 2 years out of college while working a full-time sales job. So I was writing for some Mets blogs and I was writing for some Giants blogs. And it just so happened that Sports Illustrated had an opening for their Mets site. They had launched their Mets site, but then the guy who was there had gotten fired. So for a number of months, they did not have a New York Mets site. They only had a Yankee site, and they had a couple other baseball sites. So I had known this, and one of my mentors pitched me to them and recommended me, and the opportunity. It was just like the right opportunity at the right time that I had the experience covering the Mets already part time, and then once the full time opportunity arose, I was ready for it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's like the dream come true.
Dream come true, exactly.
Good route.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Next is how'd you get involved with the Frank the Tank podcast?
Yeah, we're big.
We're big Frank the Tank
big
fans.
Frank the Tank.
Where'd that come from?
I was hoping you guys would ask about Frank, but just the key is to network as much as possible. So how I really got into doing what I'm doing now is just by networking for the most part. Like that was the main thing, was just reaching out to somebody, whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, email, phone call, like, hey, I'm like, introduce yourself, be like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. And I was wondering if you had time to talk so I could learn more about what you do. And that's basically what I did with Frank. And we had a conversation over the phone as if it was just like a podcast that night. And he agreed to talk to me, and we spoke for about an hour. And a couple of months later, he was looking for a podcast co-host, and I had already, made the introduction. So I reached out to him, and he let me do a tryout show, and I've been doing it ever since. I've been doing it. I think I started doing it April 2019. So I've been doing it for almost 4 years now.
That's awesome.
He's so
funny.
Oh my God.
He's a one of a kind.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, I think Jonathan's gonna take it from here.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So we're gonna kind of change our topic a little bit. We saw that with some off-season like GM meetings. We were wondering what it's like being around all the GMs and like knowing what's going on around there.
It's definitely very interesting, and it's good to be able to interview these GMs and kind of ask them point blank about players and about strategy. They won't name names. Like, we're in the free agent period, and it's not like they're going to say, oh yeah, we're interested in so-and-so, or we're going after this person. You kind of have to ask them, like, for example, like Billy Epler, the Mets GM, like I asked him, hey, do you think that you need to add more power into your lineup? Because the Mets were a team last year that didn't really hit many home runs. And that's like, he didn't love that question, but that's just kind of the gist of it. And Brian Cashman, the Yankees GM, like I asked him, is Josh Donaldson your third baseman next year? And he's just like, yeah, of course he is. Like, he's under contract. Like it's things like that. But it's a great atmosphere to be around. And again, it's super competitive because there's so many reporters there. But there was a lot of GMs there too, and it was a great experience getting to talk to some of them.
Definitely. That's got to be pretty like hectic, as you said. I mean, so many guys trying to get that right answer. I mean, that's got to be. It's all. I guess it's really about asking the right question. I mean, it's just that's got to be insane.
How are the meetings held with everybody? Is it like just a free for all for everybody, or is it kind of like certain GMs come up to talk at certain times?
There was times for the American League GMs to talk on one day, and then the next day there was National League GMs talking. So they'll stand around and you'll like start a scrum. Like the reporters who cover each team will go to their team's GM, but then you'll also float around to go to talk to some other team's GMs as well in a circle.
Okay.
Gotcha. So I got a couple questions regarding some new rules around baseball. The one I was wondering about was the bigger bases. You got any? How do you feel about the bigger bases?
I guess maybe they'd be safer. When you think about first base, of any close calls like that, no one gets stepped on or no one really collides. I guess that's kind of good about it. But other than that, I don't really know what it's going to do very much. What I really like is, and I'm sure you were going to ask me this, but I like the pitch clock. I think the pitch clock is going to speed up the game a little bit, which really, really does need to be sped up a bit. It's too long. I mean, I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way, but some of these games, especially the Mets, who kind of played some slower games last year, 3.5 hours, it's just too long for a baseball game sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean,
agreed.
And other rules, I mean, robo-umps are still a couple years away. I mean, they did the minor league testing.
Yeah.
It was definitely a little shaky. I mean, I'm not a big robo-ump guy. I mean, he's a catcher, so he's a guy who's going to do some framing at the high school level. And, I mean, that stuff kind of goes away with robo-umps. I mean, are you a big robo-ump guy, or I don't know. I mean, it's definitely it's a 50-50 split with a lot of people how they feel about it. I was wondering what you think and maybe what some GMs say and players think, getting to interact with them.
Yeah, I think the players want it because the players don't like the umpires, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know that it's going to be that good. I just feel like it's going to be, like you said, like it kind of takes out the purpose of framing now, and like it's kind of I don't like it. I'm not really a fan of it. I'm not sure when they're going to bring that in, but they're still a number of years away, I think, from introducing robo-umps. I'm not a huge fan of it.
Yeah. I think. Now I have one question. So I'd consider myself a bit of a baseball nerd. You know, big analytics guy like WRC plus, WAR, stuff like that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, obviously, what you think personally about it, and I mean GMs, and like how have you seen the game kind of shift? Because I know the Astros did a lot this year. They took that more analytic approach, and it definitely worked. I mean, what are you able to see once again with like what the GMs think, and then also what you think personally with analytics in baseball? There's a lot of people who are against it, think it's taken away the simplicity of the game and whatnot.
You have to have a healthy balance. That's what I think about it. You have to have a healthy balance. Like, yes, analytics are very important and they do help enhance the games and the players' performance, but you can't be fully reliant on that because again, it's like a tree falls in the woods, you can't account for that, or there's a forest fire, you can't account for that. Billy Epler said that last year at his opening press conference. But no, I mean, also the difference is like 10 years ago, teams didn't have analytics departments. And then in the last like 5, 6, 7 years, teams started to get some analytics employees and only had a couple of them. And now some teams have massive departments of analytics employees, like the Mets do, the Dodgers do, the Astros. Like that's where the game is going. And pretty soon every team's going to have that. But that is kind of how the game's evolved, that they have these massive analytics departments and they have the bandwidth to provide the players with data. Now, the one thing that's challenging is in 2021, the Mets were said to have overload of analytics and data, that the right information was there, but it wasn't being filtered to them, in the correct manner. So I think that was something that changed this year, which we saw them have some success, was that the coaching staff was able to filter the information to the players so that they weren't overwhelmed each day with too much information. So I think that's really important in today's game too with analytics.
Yeah, I definitely think that's where Buck Showalter came in. I mean, super analytic heavy, like, front office, but then Buck Showalter being a more traditional type of manager, I think that definitely brought some of that balance. Have you ever gotten to speak with Buck?
Yeah, and I spoke with him almost every day. I spoke with him individually a couple of times, but he did his pregame press conference and postgame press conference every day. So I was asking questions constantly, and he he was born for New York. He was born for the spotlight. He puts on a show every time he speaks, and he's one of the smartest baseball people in the world. Like, he's the smartest, one of, if not the smartest managers in the game of baseball. He knows every little detail, every little rule, and he made a significant impact to the Mets this year.
Definitely. Now, this question is more geared towards like you personally. So, in doing some research, I saw that you were the first to report the Joey Gallo trade, if I am correct. What was that like, and how did you like put yourself in that like situation, like a little insight to how you got yourself there? Because you always see the guys like Ian Rappaport, Schefter, guys like that are always on the ball like seconds, like before it even happens. It feels like they know. Like you were like 10, 20 minutes ahead of some guys. How did you get to do that, and how'd you make that happen?
So with Joey Gallo, I was looking for a Mets trade scoop, and I got a Joey Gallo trade scoop that fell into my lap that that I wasn't looking for, but it was I was happy with it. It was my first trade scoop. I had been working my sources for about 10 days leading up to the trade deadline, constantly working the phones, not talking to these guys, nonstop, like 24/7 almost, and trying to find information and rumors and everything. And on the day of the trade deadline, I was trying to get Mets trade scoops. And one of my sources, who's with the Dodgers, he got the news that Joey Gallo was being traded to them, and he threw it to me, and I put it out there. And yeah, it was awesome. It was surreal because I've been working towards breaking a trade scoop like that for a number of years, and that was my first one. And it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was still pretty damn good. Like, I was super pumped about it when I got it.
That's gotta be. That's gotta be. So the trade deadline, I'm assuming, was pretty crazy to try to set up and get that trade scoop. I mean, I know free agency is about to really kick off pretty soon. What are some of the things you're trying to do to prep for that?
Just be ready for anything because these signings drop at any time. But I'm also working my sources during the week, and right now everything's really quiet. But I think with the winter meeting starting next week, I'm going to be going out to San Diego for that. I think that things will start to heat up. The guys will start getting signed, and at least maybe the rumor mill will heat up a little bit. We got the Mets have Jacob DeGrom, Brandon Nimmo, who they're trying to re-sign, also trying to improve externally as well. So, yeah, I just kind of getting ready and enjoying the downtime a little bit. I mean, it's starting to pick back up kind of in the last few days, but enjoying the downtime while I can because things are about to probably get wild.
Definitely. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a lighter segment, some quick, like, fire-off questions about, some baseball stuff. So, who was your favorite player growing up?
David Wright.
David Wright, same. I think that's pretty good. What about a favorite non-Met growing up?
Derek Jeter.
Oof. Oh, I'm not a big Yankee.
But neither was I. But, I mean, he was like the model player. Like, he was clutch. He was a captain. He was a champion. Like, definitely. If I wasn't a Mets fan, I would have been a Yankees fan because I root for local teams only.
Yeah.
And Derek Jeter was someone who everyone looked up to growing up.
Definitely.
Captain.
Favorite player now on the Mets?
Favorite. So, not that I have a favorite player now that I cover them professionally, but favorite player to interact with in the clubhouse, probably either Lindor or Starling Marte. I'm pretty cool with Starling Marte. But Lindor is great. Marte is great. Scherzer is great, but he's super intense. Who else? Mark Canha is pretty good too. He's one of the leaders on that team. So I'd say those players are probably my favorite to interact with.
You got a favorite player to watch overall, like just certain skill sets that you personally like?
I like Trey Turner. I really like Trey Turner. I like what he does, and he's like a 5-tool player. On the Mets, it's probably Marte. I think Marte is a 5-tool player. But on another team, probably Paul Goldschmidt too, the NL MVP. He's fun to watch. But Trey Turner, I like his skill set a lot too. I think he's the smoothest player in baseball.
Okay. And now your favorite baseball movie. This one has a lot of controversial picks here. Sandlot? I'm a Sandlot guy.
I like Moneyball, and I also like Trouble with the Curve.
Okay, Moneyball.
Moneyball's good.
Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year is good. Yeah.
Rookie of the Year is good, yeah.
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams.
45.
42.
Yeah.
45.
45.
No, 42. No.
I haven't seen 42, actually.
I
watched it last year.
Yeah, I watched it about a year ago. Awesome movie. I think Field of Dreams, awesome
I haven't
movie.
watched it.
A little overrated. I think it's
just iconic.
The nostalgia factor plays into it a little too hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
What's the one where it's like the old guy trying to go back into the league?
Mr. 3000?
Yeah.
Mr. 3000. I haven't seen that one, but
I watched bits
Bernie
and pieces.
Mac.
okay.
It's with Bernie Mac.
Yeah.
It's on the Brewers, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he is.
So, beside from the Joey Gallo report, what was your favorite article / like reporter moment? Because I write, so I mean I can kind of feel having that best article. I feel like maybe you have one. I don't know if you do.
Last year I reported that Max Scherzer wanted the Mets to hire Buck Showalter, and that was a massive story, blew up everywhere, and got me on Boomer and Gio, which was cool.
Boomer. I listen to them on the radio every day. That's
nuts. And then I mean that's just sick. I mean, you have a really, now we're gonna go more specifically into the Mets stuff because as a fan I am pretty curious. What do you have any? I don't know how much you're able to say and stuff, but DeGrom just they definitely, I heard with the Rays a couple hours ago. DeGrom.
Yeah.
I don't think much of that because the Rays aren't a team to give up too much money. But do you think DeGrom and Nimmo coming back is likely?
I think the Mets feel pretty good about retaining both those players. especially DeGrom, because they think if he gets if they can match any offer that he gets externally, that he'll probably choose to come back. Nimmo's a little more trickier because he's drawing interest from so many teams, and he's in high demand because he's a two-way center fielder, and there's not many of those guys around the game of baseball right now. So I think that Nimmo, I wouldn't call it likely just because you never know who's going to overpay. But I think I think there's a good chance that both of them wind up with the Mets next season.
Definitely. And then just for the guys maybe coming in, I've heard, I mean, the Mets starters were obviously strong and then, struggled more near the end of the season. Guys coming in, I know Kodai Senga and Carlos Rodon. Rodon just met with the Mets, and then Senga met not too long ago, and I heard both went well. I mean, what do you think about them two and specifically, and maybe any other players that you think maybe could come to the Mets?
If DeGrom leaves, I think Carlos Rodon would be a perfect number 2 behind Max Scherzer. I think if DeGrom stays, that they still have a chance to signing Kodai Senga, who a lot of people are raving about, and he's a disciple of Yu Darvish, who's like his mentor. Yu Darvish is a great pitcher, obviously.
Yeah.
But Billy Epler has a history of signing Japanese baseball players. I mean, Billy Epler signed Shohei Ohtani when he was the GM of the Angels. But yeah, I think that there's a chance that Senga could wind up with the Mets. And with Rodon, I think it's going to be if DeGrom leaves, then there's a chance Rodon winds up with the Mets. The Rangers also have serious interest in Rodon, and they were the biggest competitors for DeGrom. So that's kind of good news for the Mets in their hopes to keep DeGrom.
Yeah, definitely. And then with, you can touch up more on the minor leaguers coming up because, it's a very top-heavy, awesome, minor league farm system with Beatty and Alvarez. I mean, if you want to ask about that a minute.
Yeah, I was wondering. Since I'm a catcher, I look at a lot of videos of Parada and Alvarez. I was wondering what you thought about the Mets having both of them. I know Parada's still out a couple of years for being called up, but what do you think if Alvarez produces? Do you think Parada would possibly be a trade piece, or would they try and move him to first base?
I think they could do either or. I think that it's never, you could never have too many good players, and we saw this years ago with Travis d'Arnaud and Kevin Plawecki, and it was which one of the Mets going to trade? And in hindsight, they should have traded one of them while they had the chance, while they had the value, but specifically probably Plawecki. But I think that Parada could definitely move to first base. We also have the DH, which could be opening for one of them. And if not, then he could be used as a trade bait. I think the Mets just went best player available, and they felt Kevin Parada was the best player where their draft slot was. So yeah, again, I don't have a problem with them taking another catcher, even though they have Alvarez waiting in the wings.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to interact with Alvarez and Beatty, but how much do you think their involvement will maybe be next year? I mean, two very, very young guys. Alvarez, one of the probably the youngest catcher in the league next year, and definitely will be on the major league roster because he made the playoff roster. And then Beatty broke his thumb, so I don't know what you've heard maybe about their involvement within the team, coming up next year, because the Mets do still have James McCann under that very large contract, and then Escobar and Luis Guillorme, who dealt with that injury down the stretch there. But what do you think their involvement might be next year?
I think they're going to have every chance to make the major league roster during spring training, and if not, then they're going to start the season in AAA. But they're going to contribute at some point this year. The Mets are expecting them to come up and produce at some point, even if it's not from the very beginning. They're both very close to being major league ready, playing every day in the major leagues. And if the guys in front of them don't produce, then they're going to lose their jobs. That's as plain and simple as it is.
Definitely. Something you talked about before was the Mets bringing in power. You talked with Billy Epler about that. How do you think maybe they could address that? Because they did re-sign Daniel Vogelbach, who is definitely more of an on-base guy than a pop guy. But I mean, how else do you think? Because other than Pete Alonso and maybe you could get 30 out of Frankie, but other than that, you've run thinner on power on the roster. How do you think maybe you could address that. Obviously, maybe Alvarez, but that's up in the air.
Yeah, there's internal options. Obviously, Alvarez, maybe Beatty, even. But externally, they just lost out on Jose Abreu, who signed with the Astros. I felt he would have been a pretty good fit for the Mets. But there's Josh Bell and there's JD Martinez, and they tried to trade for both of those guys at the trade deadline last summer and came up empty. But the asking prices were too high on those guys. But I think now they could potentially sign one of those guys in free agency and stick them at the DH spot, and that would help produce some more power, at least 20 home runs or so from another spot in the lineup, which wouldn't be the worst thing for this team.
Definitely. Yeah, I think. I mean, if the Mets get some pop, I definitely would call them, World Series contenders. Maybe. I don't know. I know you're not a big Mets guy.
Oh, they probably are.
I'll
give it to you.
Give them their flowers. You won't, Chuck? Still on the. And then, I don't. So you did say So are you just deal with the Mets, or do you hear anything about the Yankees? Because there's a large amount of Yankee fans at GL. Maybe have you heard anything on Aaron Judge?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, anything on Aaron Judge? I heard the Giants lowballed him. That's all I've really heard.
Well, I think the Giants are probably the only threat to really sign him away from the Yankees. I don't think the Yankees are big on having iconic players, faces of the franchise, the captain. I don't think that they're going to let Judge out the door. He's going to be really expensive. He's going to make over $300 million, but I don't think there's any way that Aaron Judge leaves the Yankees.
Yeah.
Or that the Yankees, more so the Yankees, that they let him leave. I don't think there's any way.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you got to re-sign him. I mean, as much as I don't want him to go to the Yankees, I do think,
I mean, he had a crazy year. It would be
Insane
hard
year.
to
He also killed the
duplicate it.
Mets specifically. He had so many home runs against the Mets, it felt like. And then another free agency based question. So for DeGrom and Pete Alonso is going to be due for a contract day pretty soon. What is specifically DeGrom? What do you think his AAV is going to be like? What do you think that contract is going to pan out? Because I mean, he's an injury prone pitcher, but I mean, obviously when he does pitch, he's absolutely insane. I mean, could it be that north of 40 mil, 45 mil a year? I mean, Uncle Steve is going to pretty much give the money where he wants to spend it, with Edwin Diaz also getting signed. He's definitely not afraid to spend his money.
Yeah, I think DeGrom's going to get probably more than Scherzer, maybe $44 million a year. I think that's what he wants to do, is eclipse Scherzer's deal, be it on a short-term deal like a 3-year contract. I do think that's probably what he's looking for. But in the very least, he's going to get 40 mil or more.
Yeah. And then is Pete Alonso a type of guy you want to give, maybe not a Francisco Lindor size deal? Obviously, he doesn't have that type of versatility defensively and base running wise, but being one of the power hitters and a main guy of the franchise, is he a 6-7 year deal guy, or is he a guy you want to extend until he's 37, 10 years or whatnot, and then 20 mil a year, more like a Castellanos type AAV, or more of that, enter that Corey Seager, that type of territory? Is there a sweet spot, you think?
It's tough to say. I mean, Alonso's contract is coming up pretty soon that they're going to have to wind up giving him an extension. I think he gets 10 years because of his age. And yeah, I think maybe in the $200 million range. I mean, Austin Riley, who's a great player for the Atlanta Braves, getting 10 years, 200 mil, maybe Alonso could sign a hometown contract like that, but I'm not really sure about the price range right now. I guess it's all going to depend on how he does this year. If he goes out and has another monster year, then he's going to get paid handsomely. And I think it's definitely going to be over a 10-year period of a contract.
Definitely.
I was also wondering more so about the minor leaguers and the younger guys. I know I touched upon Alvarez and Parada, but I was wondering if there's anybody else that has stood out to you in the minor league system that many, somebody who's not really inside of baseball, wouldn't stand out.
Alex Ramirez, center fielder in Single A St. Lucie. I think he was one of the Mets' untouchable prospects at the trade deadline this year. A lot of teams asked for him. And he had a really, really good year in Single A, and I think he's only going to get better. He needs to fill out a little bit physically in his frame, but I think he could be someone to watch over the course of the next couple of years as a potential outfielder of the future for the Mets.
Definitely. Got any more questions, Chuck?
I'm good.
Well,
that's up everything. Yeah.
I think we're all done here. Thank you very much, Pat. We appreciate it deeply, and thank you once again, John, Mr. Haddad, for bringing you on here. Thank you, and we appreciate it. And
This was awesome.
yeah, this was
Thank you.
awesome, especially as a Mets fan. Thank you.
Even as just a baseball fan,
baseball
it does-
fan, sports fan, and as people who
Yeah,
talk about sports,
Yeah.
it's just it means a lot for you coming on here.
Thanks,
very
guys.
much.
I
Thank you
I
so
really
much.
appreciated it, and it was my pleasure to come on.
Governor Livingston. Oh, that camera's dead. You are in the zone. Get out of the zone. Have a nice one. Thank you.
Thank you.